Welcome back to another episode of JAWS Diaries.
I'm Ashley Wahler.
And I am Jason Wahler.
So this week has been awful. I will start by saying that. Last week I had touched about how I was not working a great program. I hadn't been going to a lot of meetings. I hadn't been taking time for myself. And for what I thought was time for myself by going to some doctor's appointments and implementing some things into place, I really wasn't doing enough for my mental health and for self-care. And
can you talk about that a little bit? Like, so what you were doing stuff that you thought was for yourself, but in reality it wasn't benefiting your program. Like, can you explain that? Like, I know what happened, but
yeah. So basically I hadn't been to a doctor in forever, I feel like. And so I ended up doing the research, like making sure that I was taking the time to go to a doctor, get my blood work done, go to my OB, like do the things that I really needed to do, which a lot of that stuff goes
it seems like self-care.
Yeah. And I had been going to like a meeting and adding one more meeting, but I was feeling like that really probably wasn't enough after everything that had happened. But
you started exercising a little bit though. Yes. So, I mean, what I'm getting at though is like you're saying that you thought you were doing self-care, but like really, what were you not doing?
Wasn't going to enough meetings. Maybe I wasn't taking time for myself to just meditate.
What about you being too busy?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely has a lot to do with it.
I think that was one of the key factors was you were implementing things, you know, like a meeting or going to work out or, you know, scheduling a doctor's appointment, but you didn't balance, like the way I saw it is like you had this crazy schedule that you were doing with work and all these other things that you have going on. And like, you just started plugging these things in there as opposed to like balancing these things out. Like you didn't like pull a thing or two, like you just kind of jam more stuff into your schedule where it actually was not effective.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say for sure.
So I think, you know, what's really happened is on my side is, the tables have turned a little bit. You know, it's something that is super important to understand and something that we've seen firsthand is Ashley over the last 2.5 years is really, you know, she put forth her program and did what she needed to do to help me get to where I'm at. And, you know, this last year, even though I've had a couple of slips, has been a very big growing period for me. But in that time, you know, I've been growing. And Ashley's kind of started to slowly titrate away, which it wasn't like this big impact thing that we've seen. It was just kind of like over the course of time, it started to deteriorate. And it kind of had this effect where, you know, basically there was kind of an explosion, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's like when I'm working, if we're both start here and I'm working my program, I start moving forward and I'm kind of like, where are you at? Or vice versa. If she's working her program and I'm not, I'm back here. So, like I said, the tables have turned. This was like the first time where I was actually able to identify like and help Ashley like really understand like, hey, what's going on with you? Like, you know, I'm seeing that you're getting super overwhelmed, you're super frustrated, you're not taking care of yourself, and you kind of came back combative a little bit, more of like defensive and like I am doing all this stuff, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I was really resentful at first just because Jason hasn't really been in the capacity to like for a while to sit down and be able
5 years.
Yeah, to be able to really look at like the things I was struggling with and be able to be a support to me. And sometimes you have to love people from a distance and put up those boundaries. And that's what he was doing to me, is kind of putting up a few boundaries with me because I was starting to spin. And for those of you that struggle with codependency or have had addiction in your life, or somebody that struggles with addiction, you know that anxiety is like a major thing that we all struggle with, along with like irritability and busyness. A lot of us become workaholics just because keeping busy, you don't have to think about a lot of other things. And so that's really when I know that I'm having like a setback in my life, is I'm putting too many things into place and using the word busy and just kind of not living life, just like going through life without being in the present. And when I'm not in the present, that is when I get a lot of anxiety because I'm not really sure where I'm going, and it just creates a big problem for me.
Well, and also too so there was that piece, and Not to bring up more stuff, but it was like you also were talking about, stuff that had happened 5 years ago. So you guys don't know this, but 5 years ago we had 6 family members pass away in the matter of 2 years, and those were all very instrumental people in our life. And one of them was actually Ashley's dad. You want to share a little about that too? Like other stuff is starting to surface now that like you're not having to take care of me, and
I think that's exactly what it is too. Like big triggers for me too are always like holidays and birthdays, and this last week was my birthday, and every year around my birthday I don't know, there's people out there that are the same way that I am, where like you look at your birthday and you think like how did I get here, or I don't know, it's just like a contemplating time of like you feel like you should be further along in your life at this age, and you miss the people that you love so much that aren't there with you anymore. And for me, it just kind of, it's a big triggering time for me, and it puts me into a little bit of a depression because I do miss my dad so much. And I didn't really ever but I never really, I guess, dealt with his loss. I never processed his loss. And because of the fact that Jason has had those slips over the years, I constantly had been putting my energy into his recovery and like focusing not necessarily all on him, but that he's my life and my daughter's my life. And after having a baby, like I didn't have time to really process my
let's just 5 years ago I was in the like I started slipping, so she didn't know what to do at that point. She had no tools, no resources, nothing. So there was a big fear thing with that, then trying to process her dad's death. And then over the course of time, is like after a couple of years went by, when it started getting really bad on my side, we ended up getting pregnant. So there's a lot of like things. She never had time, the tool, like she put so much energy into me and, her codependency. That's just showed that's how sick somebody can be. A huge tragic incident like her father passing, and being stuck in the depths of the addiction and the tango with me with all this stuff. She was never able to process that. And I think over this time, it's like she's having emotions arise that I'm witnessing that are reflecting back to then, what she needs to obviously take care of. It's a huge thing that is coming up, but it's also, I think now that those emotions are coming up, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my perspective, is those things are all coming up, and now you're distracting yourself with busyness. Like you're putting so much stuff there. Like, okay, now I have all this extra energy to be able to put forth stuff. I don't really want to take care of the uncomfortable stuff, but I want to add more things that are exciting and can take me out of this. When in reality, those things actually now have come back to haunt you, I think. And correct me, I don't want to speak for you.
No, actually, it's like really interesting the way that you put it like that, because it's very true. Like every single thing that you're saying makes so much sense, and it's stuff that I didn't even like realize until just now. But it's true. Like there was so much.
But I think just think about that though, is that's how much a codependent can be involved in somebody's addiction. That's like pretty, like for me, it's like a very profound thing, like to really understand that, because I haven't been able to conceptualize this for a long time. Like this is the best I've done for a while. So I mean, even when we talk and share with you guys, like we're just speaking from the heart. We don't have a script. We're just telling you guys what's going on. But again, I want to get back to the core thing of like this week though, is there's all those things that have happened, right? And is there anything you want to add to that? I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's perfect.
But I think understanding all that, and it's like, as we've made this progress, though, it's not like we had this one incident this week and it was like, oh, everything exploded. It's more of like these, like I said, it was like a timeline over the last year. Even though I've had those slips, I've still made progression. I mean, like the last 2 slips I had over this last year were like a 1 or 2 day thing. Ashley set a super gnarly boundary, the last one that happened, December 15th. And, we've made tremendous progress since then. But it's like, as I've kind of been getting better and I haven't been in a place to really identify that. And now, like looking back, like we've talked about it, and it's like we can see back 9 months, a year ago, where she started to slowly slip the other way, right?
I don't want to discredit any of the progress that I've made, because I do think that like I made enough progress to be able to have boundaries with you, which took a lot of time and a lot of program for me to be able to even have those boundaries.
100%.
So, and that was in December. So
let me correct that. Is you really did, like, yes,
but I've made a big jump back in the last couple months, I will say.
Yeah, but it's like, I think, yes, I 100% agree with you, as you have made tremendous strides with that. But I also think there's been things that have set up, because it wasn't like we've been great these last, this last duration of sobriety, and then we just had this huge explosion. There's been build up and tension for the time. It's like, yeah, you have made progress in certain parts, But over the course of time, there's been things that you haven't, like, again, not processing your father's death to like just putting it and implementing busy work. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I think like the moral of the story is for this week is how much of like an impact each other has on the relationship, and how it's literally like I always say it's two sides of a coin. Whereas a couple weeks ago, I was talking about how I had to set a boundary because if I'm going this way and Jason's not, we're going to constantly grow apart. And now it's completely reverse. So it just goes to show that it's not necessarily all his fault. I have a huge impact on his recovery. I have a huge impact on our relationship. And it's not just all about the addict. It's about us too as the codependent. It's about our recovery. It's about making sure that we take care of ourselves, because it can be
detrimental. And I mean, like we had to have, like, I mean, again, is we're continuing with all of our regular stuff, but it got to a point where Ashley really had to take a hard look at like the importance of what you need to do. And I think it feels amazing to be in a spot. Like I feel so horrible myself, is like there's so much pain that she's had for over the last 5 years that I haven't been able to be there for her. And now it's like I look at this and like I'm not expecting everything to change overnight, but it's also like I'm not gonna be the enabler and support the behaviors that she's doing. I can be supportive, but I'm not going to work harder than you. It's like we tell each other, we'll be there. You got to give 51%, and the other person's got to give. You got to give 51%, and I'll give 49. That's just what the deal is with this, and I think it's just important that when you both, if you are a loved one, like for us, it's if somebody that is struggling with substance abuse, and you're in a relationship, in a marriage, whatever it may be, it's like you both have to go in and work a program with this, because I always say wherever there's an alcoholic or an addict, there's a codependent, and sometimes they're just as sick, if not sicker. And that's not to mitigate, and I'm not taking everything off of me. We're highlighting the differences between the effects that I've had, but also the effects that Ashley's had in this. And it's like, I haven't been in a spot to be able to say anything, because when I'm under the influence and I'm not thinking clearly, and I'm irrational and I'm irritable and restless, discontent, all the different things, is like, I'm not in a place to be able to say anything, but to be in a spot where I can actually really give information and try to be there as a support and a help. It's like, it's amazing, but it's also, I feel really bad that it's taken this long for me to get here. So, I mean, I'm obviously very grateful for you, is because you supported me, but I'm
grateful for you for putting me in check.
Well, yeah, I love you and I care about you. So I think, again, what is the takeaway?
I think I just said the takeaway.
Well, what is
two sides of a coin, and how important it is for both of you to work, both of us.
So what are we doing now, moving forward?
Well, moving forward, I mean, pedal to the metal, like definite therapy. What do you mean?
Pedal to the metal? Didn't we just talk about slowing down?
No. Pedal to the metal for recovery, like halting for the work stuff right now, making sure that I'm taking the time for my family, and making sure that I'm taking time for my mental health. And that's the most important.
I think what she's really doing with support is like, she asked for help to like, how do I mellow this stuff out? And it's like, hey, let's just look at what you have, and let's just take away let's make a priority list. Let's go back to the basics. Let's keep things simple. Like, what do you have to get done? And what are all of these other added things that are not priority? And we did that, and, and she's done great for the last few days with it. And again, she was an amazing mom during this process. She's an amazing, amazing cook, did all these different things. But in reality is she lost sight of herself, and she spiraled. And it's really hard watching, just as it's hard for her to watch me when I'm drinking and using and all that. It's really hard to watch the one that you love, like in a space of spiral. It's the same thing. Make sure you have balance in your life, I guess, is my takeaway, and make sure you got a support system. Thank God we have each other, and thank God we have people we can count on.
All right, guys, that's it for today. We'll see you guys next week, and be sure to tune in and subscribe to our channel.